of you who've just joined us, well, I've edited it so that they've just joined us.
Yeah,
Mark has got a job as the curator of meteorites at the Natural History Museum.
I have indeed. Brackets interim, but I'm loving it. And there's meteorites everywhere, and they're all amazing. Um, yeah, it's really, really cool.
New
Such a
academics asking for meteorites, right?
yeah,
That's the idea.
yeah. We are one of the largest collections in the world. Slightly kind of fighting a bit with Vienna, I think it is. But the collection is very unique in terms of what it has. So it's got lots of falls, for example, which are meteorites that have been observed to fall, which are really good because you know when and where they fall, how they've been sat around on the Earth. So yeah, it's a really unique collection, and people are often keen to do research on it, which is great. And it's really
What's
good that the
the
museum can facilitate that.
what's the best meteorite that you've seen?
Um, I yeah, this is people have asked me this before. There's one that is called Barwell, that's known as the Christmas Eve meteorite.
Because it fell on New
Uh,
Year's Eve.
yeah.
Yeah.
It fell in Leicestershire, actually.
Really? Is it near
Roots.
Market Harbour?
I have no idea. Have you heard of Barwell? Because meteorites are named after where they land.
Oh, I don't know, Barwell, no.
Um, but yeah, it landed on Christmas Eve, so it's quite a nice Christmas present and has this really unique like pebble within it that kind of suggests maybe that it formed through an impact. So it's not called an ordinary chondrite. It's kind of fairly common type of meteorite, but it's got this slightly weird thing in it that might have come when two things collided. So that's a pretty cool one.
It's not just a massive chondrule. It's a,
Imagine.
can you imagine? What's the most rubbish meteorite?
None of them are rubbish. None of them.
So congratulations, Mark.
Thanks, Jack.
Yellowstone National Park. So I've done a little bit of research about Yellowstone. So we're going to go through what is Yellowstone and how likely is a catastrophic event to occur in the future.
And what would that do?
And what would that do? We go into that. That's a bit clickbaity, but we
Okay.
will go into that. And what would it look like?
Mm,
And so we can cover first what is Yellowstone.
mm.
Yeah, so Yellowstone sits on a natural hotspot, which we've covered before, an anomalous hot zone under the Earth's crust where the magma sort of bubbling away. And the magma like rises up through the crust and forms a volcano. It's a supervolcano, Yellowstone, which is characterized with its ability to erupt more than 1,000 kilometers squared of ejecta, so ash, lava, etc.
Which is a huge amount. Like, do we have any kind of comparison for those kind of numbers? I don't know, like your average like truck that carries liquids. Like, what is that? That's like I don't know, 10 by 2 by 2 meters. So what, 40 meters cubed? And you said how much
At
material?
1,000 kilometers squared.
It would cover that area.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I will go into exactly how much that covers.
Okay.
It would cover the whole Midwest of the US,
Wow.
Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho.
Hmm.
For comparison, that you know that famous Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980.
Yeah.
If this were to erupt, if the Yellowstone were to properly erupt as a super volcano, it would be up to 2,000 times larger than Mount St. Helens,
Gosh.
a minimum of 600 times larger based on past eruptions.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a big boy.
It's a big old boy. It's a big old boy. So it has an underlying magma circulating below it, beneath the surface, which is referred to as magma chambers, which causes the hot springs, the do you say geysers or geysers?
Jesus.
Geysers, I say geysers. Oh, okay, you're right, geyser. And volcanic eruptions as well.
So how did Yellowstone form?
Well, Yellowstone, as I say, it's a volcano. So 2 million years ago, magma rose up from the hotspot deep inside the Earth and produced three massive eruptions. We had an eruption 2 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, and 600,000 years ago. And these are more extreme than any eruption that the Earth has seen before. Now, the first eruption 2 million years ago, so much magma was blasted out that actually emptied the magma chamber below, and the ground above it collapsed into the magma chamber, leaving a giant depression in the ground, which is
Mhm.
called, Mark, oh, what?
Caldera.
Caldera. You're absolutely right. The caldera was 80 kilometers long, 65 kilometers wide, and
Wow.
hundreds of meters deep.
So I imagine if you're a geologist mapping that, or if you're just kind of looking at the surface, when sometimes when these features are so large, this is true for impact craters as well. Like they're actually quite hard to spot, even though you think, oh, massive volcanic creator like a crater or caldera, that would be quite easy. But when we're talking on such large scales, ultimately, I guess you're relying on things like satellite imagery and geophysical data to look at this stuff on such a large scale.
I think the same is true for the Sudbury in was that Canada?
Canada, yeah.
And the same is true for also looking at a impact like the Yucatan Peninsula, the one that killed the dinosaurs. No
Yeah,
one could see it.
yeah,
You could see overturned sediment, but no one could see it until really you took a big zoom out and had a look.
yeah, yeah.
So we had that eruption 2 million years ago, and then there was another smaller caldera that formed 1.3 million years ago, and then another that formed 600,000 years ago, and that formed the Yellowstone caldera. So each eruption that we had, those three major eruptions that there's been, they form these mini calderas, and that
Hmm.
forms the Yellowstone National Park.
So you might come on to this, but you were saying two eruptions ago, it was 1.3 million years ago. Then the last one was 600,000 years ago, which, if that kind of periodicity continues, then we are shortly due another eruption.
We are, and I will get onto that.
Okay.
These are the super eruptions, as
Okay.
it were. There
Yeah.
have been a little bit of eruptions here or there as well,
Okay.
dispersed, but these are the super eruptions. But to put these eruptions into context, and I've already said it, Mount St. Helens in 1980, the largest of the Yellowstone eruptions, so the one 2 million years ago, was 2,000 times larger. And the
Mhm.
smallest eruption, I think it was the 600,000 years ago, was 600 times larger.
Okay. Well.
So the USGS, United States Geological Survey, they estimate that these three eruptions expelled enough ash and lava to fill the Grand Canyon. So that's a heck of a lot of
It's a lot.
ash and lava.
Yeah.
So we can go get existential now, and we can talk about if Yellowstone were to erupt, what would it look like?
Hmm. Can I just add at this point? So, um, Yellowstone is the first national park in the US, which was signed by Ulysses S. Grant. Was he one of the Was he the president?
Grant sounds like president, yeah.
President Grant. So he signed it in 1872. But actually, before that point, there had only been three expeditions that explored the Yellowstone area in the preceding 3 years. So it's quite interesting that only after three expeditions they knew enough that this was an area to protect.
It's
Um,
probably quite an interesting place to go. You had geysers and hot springs.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It probably stank as well.
Lots of sulfur.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
so. So if Yellowstone were to erupt, what would it look like? These original eruptions that we discussed were enough to cover most of Western America by ash and lava, and enough to also to drop global temperatures. So there's a paper in 2014 in G Cubed, which modeled what it would look like if Yellowstone were to erupt. So they calculated there's enough volcanic ash, lava, a mixture of rock and glass fragments that would cover the Midwest of the US, which I said before,
Mhm.
Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, which would be completely blanketed by ash, which would kill plants and people, actually,
Yeah,
thinking about it,
yeah.
destroy buildings as well.
I imagine you get an all sorts of a mixture of kind of hazards, right, from eruptions because you get like what is it, lahars that are like a mixture of lava and mud and water and sometimes ice. Although I don't know if there's ice in Yellowstone. And then you get this pyroclastic flow, which is this big cloud of um, like a turbulent rush of sort of ash and rocky fragments that are thrown out and that are super super fast. Like you couldn't really outrun them, as well as the generic kind of the classic lava flows that you get and presumably tectonic activity as well,
Yeah,
and then all the ash that kind of gets dispersed in the cloud.
exactly. Well, the lava flows themselves would probably be contained within the park,
Hmm.
I'd imagine, but the ash would form an umbrella cloud That would that would block out the sun and probably cause some volcanic lightning, which would be quite scary, but quite cool to
Quite
witness.
magnificent. Yeah,
Quite
yeah.
magnificent. But the volcanic ash emits sulfur aerosols, and that's important because sulfur aerosols are very good at reflecting sunlight back into space,
Mhm.
which would cause a global drop in temperature. So if you look at the Pinatubo eruption in 1981, that cooled the planet by about 1 degrees.
Wow.
Uh, but the Tambora eruption in 1815 cooled the planet enough to actually start damaging crops, which obviously could lead to
Mm.
famine. And these are actually tiny compared to what Yellowstone eruption is capable of. If you think about the Triassic mass extinction, a paper by Kent et al. In 2024, which is one of my academic advisors, so
Ah.
I've got to shout out, is that they established that massive lava flow is part of the Central Atlantic magmatic province. These huge lava flows, which are enough to cover almost the entire surface of the moon in terms of
Wow.
their volume, huge.
Yeah.
Um, they are believed to be one of the reasons for the mass extinction event, or at least the leading cause, because of the release of sulfur aerosols, which
Hmm.
dramatically dropped global temperatures,
Mm.
which is kind
And
of
I
interesting.
guess it's a similar effect to when we had the impact that wiped out the dinosaurs, right? It threw all this material up into the atmosphere and just drastically changed environmental and climatic conditions.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in this instance, the Triassic extinction wiped out 76% of terrestrial and marine life. So
Mm.
it's not insignificant. So with that scaremongering done, how likely is Yellowstone to erupt in the near future?
Mm.
Well, the USGS say it's very, very unlikely.
Okay, that's good.
So if you look at the three eruptions, you've already alluded to this, but we had 2 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, 600,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So by this, it happens every 725,000 years, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not due for another 100,000 years or so.
Okay.
But obviously, we're looking from a scientific point of view, a very small sample size of
Yeah.
three.
N equals three.
Yes, and that's not very accurate. You need a lot more samples.
Mm.
Most volcanic systems that have a super eruption, like these three, it doesn't happen multiple times. So if they do occur more than once, they're just not equally spaced events. So
Okay.
we seem quite unlikely that it's going to happen at the moment. Um, although it's possible, scientists also aren't convinced that an eruption will ever happen. If you think about the amount of material that's going to be ejected, it depends massively on what's inside the magma chamber.
Mm.
And at the moment, the rhyolite magma chamber, so rhyolite being a type of igneous rock, the rhyolite magma chamber below Yellowstone is only 10 to 15% molten, and the rest is solid.
Wow.
So it's not clear that there is enough magma to actually form a catastrophic event.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It could just be a tiny eruption. I think most recent eruption at Yellowstone was 60,000 years ago, or 70,000 years ago, and it was just a small lava flow.
Mm.
So it wasn't
Okay.
going to be a super eruption.
Mm-hmm.
So probability is quite low.
Aside from the like eruptions, presumably earthquakes might happen like during that time while things underground are readjusting.
The circulation of magma for sure
Yeah. Yeah.
cause earthquakes. Again, I'm not sure about because of the limited amount of molten rock. I don't know how strong these earthquakes are going to be.
Hmm. I imagine. I mean, I guess like they're all kind of like brittle failure events. Like if most of the material, well, not most of it, but if a lot of it is solid rather than kind of liquid, as well as the readjustment of the magma, like you're going to be having rocks under pressure,
Yes, that's true.
like crustal stresses. So like,
That's true.
brittle failure, like just snapping rather than bending
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah. You have that elastic strain energy building and building, and then it
Yeah.
snaps, as we remember from our earthquakes episode.
Mm.
Let me blow my nose, which is a metaphor really for
The
volcanoes.
eruption of.
You're not looking at this, are you? Oh.
No, I'm not. Don't worry.
So it seems that a super eruption from Yellowstone is unlikely in the near future.
Mm. Okay. Do you know why Yellowstone is called Yellowstone?
I'm going to guess it's to do with the volcanic sulfur that means the rocks turn yellow.
Um, so part of that is well,
Just
it's a
tell me
good
I'm wrong,
guess.
Mark.
There are things in there that maybe have okay. So apparently, there's popular belief that it was named after the rhyolite lavas that you talked about. So these igneous rocks, very silica rich. Um, Silica rich lava is also normally quite viscous, like honey, because of the way that the silica interacts, like the bonds between the layers of silica molecules. Um, and that these rocks get chemically altered by reactions with steam and hot water. So from these geysers, and they create kind of bright yellow and pinkish colors. So some of the water or the steam that's coming out of these vents has been reported as high as 135 degrees. So it's enough to kind of alter these rocks. So it was thought it could be that, but actually, the name is attributed to as early as 1805, when the Native Americans referred to the sandstones along the banks of the Yellowstone River, and they're very yellow sandstones, kind of in eastern Montana. So actually kind of downstream from the park. So yes, despite its kind of igneous nature, it's actually named after sedimentary processes that created these sandstones.
I wonder if the name wasn't Yellowstone initially. It'd probably be something in Native American.
Oh boy.
Go on. Here we go.
Think the French gave it a name, uh, something like Roche Jaune or Pierre Jaune,
Oh, Jean.
which jaune means yellow. So maybe yellow rock. I don't know if Roche means rock. Maybe our French audience could get in touch and let us know what Roche means, or we'll use Google Translate. But it's thought that it possibly originated from the Minatari tribe, and I will get this badly wrong, but they called it the Mitseadazi, or Yellow Rock River.
Mitseadazi.
Mitseadazi. Yes, yeah.
And does he?
But apparently there's controversy around it, so um, there might have been other tribes who were involved.
That's fantastic.
I don't know. Oh, I was like, you're kind of like, oh, maybe you should mention other tribes. Then if you mention other tribes, does that devalue the tribe that actually named it? So it's tricky, but attributed to Native Americans.
I don't think the tribes would be listening in or retweeting. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine.
Have you watched any of the Yellowstone series?
I haven't.
Hmm.
Is that the one with Kevin Costner?
Possibly.
You know, the guy who plays Robin Hood in Prince of Thieves?
Yeah. No, I know Kevin Costner, but I don't know if he's in it.
Uh,
Wasn't he also in Dances with Wolves?
he help get that movie made? I know a story about that.
Go on.
He had a friend who was a writer. He stayed at Kevin's house and he ended up being a complete bum and abusing his kindness, let's just say.
Yeah.
And at one point they were having an argument and Kevin Costner threw him out the house, right?
Okay.
And they didn't speak for 6 months.
Yeah.
And the guy came back to him and said, I've got this script. Please read it. And Kevin was like, no, go away. Honestly, I think it's quite good. And they were like, no, go away. And I think he went round to his house. Maybe getting that a bit wrong. But anyway, they had another argument. They met in person. He had the script in his hand and he gave it to Kevin, but Kevin wasn't interested. And they got in an argument. And Kevin, at some point, had this writer up against the wall, with his fists over his collar
Yeah.
and shouting
Yeah.
and screaming at him, get out of my house, get out of my house. And the guy left, but left the script behind. And Kevin, one night, decided to just out of curiosity, read the script and it was Dancing with Wolves.
What? Where did you learn that? Is that
Graham
how?
Norton show.
Wow. Okay. Said by Kevin Costner himself.
It was said by Kevin Costner.
Wow. Okay.
Obviously, that won the Oscar, didn't it?
Straight from the wolf's mouth. Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner. What do you mean?
Yeah, because he won the Oscar.
Oh, I see. I was like, from a wolf? Do you know, is that a type of wolf? Oscar wolf. Not
So,
genius.
thank you. I think it makes up for my my lack of knowledge in our in a recent episode.
It was weak last week. It was a bit weak. I thought of some more about human evolution and artists.
Yeah,
Well, I thought of one more, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
yeah, nice.
What in the World actually does stem from last week's episode because we didn't have time to put it in there. But have you ever read Entangled Life
I
by, I think
haven't.
it's
Is it
Merlin Sheldrake,
great
which is a
name?
fantastic name, isn't it? It's so
Yeah,
Harry Potter.
Merle, old Merle.
Merlin
Yeah.
Sheldrake. So brilliant book, and I recommend highly anyone that does read it. It's fantastic.
Mm,
Learn all about mycelium and the strength and power of mushrooms. Um, Fantastic. But the point we were making last week was talking about the cognitive revolution and the
mhm.
development of religion, art, dreams that happened in the Paleolithic era 70,000 years ago. And it's just believed by some scientists, or at least hypothesized, rather, that mushrooms, these are magic mushrooms, had some kind of effect in the development of religion. It
Okay.
indeed could have spawned religion in some degree. Is there a joke with spawn and fungi? Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. No, there
And
isn't.
there are some caves, cave paintings that are 9,000 years old. The
Hmm.
Tassili mushroom cave paintings in Algeria.
Hmm.
And they show these mushroom shapes, the narrow and it comes out wide at the
Yeah.
top, and shows people dancing around them and
Worshipping the
signs of
mushroom.
worship. And it's believed that some of the origins of religion have come from cave dwellers being high as a kite and seeing shapes and seeing, well, deities, essentially.
Mushrooms as landing pads for aliens.
Yeah, yeah. But if you sometimes it's believed that you've seen other dimensions, obviously, and
Mm,
other ways
mm,
of thinking.
mm.
And it's believed that maybe these mushrooms showed signs of early worship, the
Wow.
worship of the mushroom.
Wow. It's interesting that they would decide to worship the mushroom and not what they were seeing in their visions.
Mm. Well, I don't know if it's because they need an explanation for why things happen without
Mm.
science. So why is there fire coming out of the mountain?
Yeah.
Why is the earth shaking?
Yeah.
What is this grand ocean in front of us? That you need some things to latch onto as like a reason for why things happen.
Mm.
And I'd imagine that the mushroom was worshipped as a thing that opens one's mind.
Do you think in the same way that we worship science?
Yeah, we don't dance around a microscope naked, chanting.
I won't comment on my research practices. Mushrooms are just such a minefield, I feel. Best avoided. Can you tell I'm not a mushroom fan?
Okay, but seriously, do not take drugs.
Thanks so much for Yellowstone. It's been super interesting. Let's hope by the time we record our next episode that it has not erupted.
Quite right. Quite right. And if it does, fantastic timing for us because people will be YouTubing it
Yeah,
and
great
Spotifying
exposure.
it. It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? It'd be great exposure
Yeah,
for us, although
yeah,
we would be perishing.
yeah.
Me
Well, you
first,
would,
because I'm
you
on the
would
East
be.
Coast.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But I'll send you the link to edit it and upload it on
yeah. Sounds
Spotify.
good. Yeah, we'll get it out.
Cool. All right.
All right. Bye.
Episode. Thanks, bud.